The reality is that racial oppression is only one form of oppression in this country. You know, and while for Black folks there's so much intersectionality in the Black experience that you can't really talk about racism without talking about classism, right? Because we live in a capitalistic society.
Hello everyone, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Theophilus. Today I have with me here a very vibrant African American. He's basically going to tell us who he is, what he's doing here in this cool UIC, the University of Illinois Chicago, which I'm actually a student here also. I think he has a very beautiful story he's supposed to share with us, I think. So we're definitely going to hear what he's doing here, what are his plans for the future, and then get to know him a little bit. Yeah, so Josh, it's nice to have you on my YouTube channel.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, the first time I saw you was, I think I met you through mostly the newsletter that you sent me to, I think, the Black students.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the work you're doing here with the Black Graduate Students Association.
Right.
We'll definitely get to that, but we want to get to know more about who you are as a person.
Sure.
So what's your full name?
Full name is Joshua Willis Adkins.
Can you pronounce that again?
Joshua Willis Adkins.
Joshua Willis.
Yes, Adkins.
Adkins.
Kind of like the diet, the Atkins diet, but with a D instead of a T.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So what are you doing here at UIC?
So I'm actually a doctoral student, now doctoral candidate in materials engineering. I study condensed matter physics, but it's essentially electronic materials. I kind of study how changing the atomic structure of a material impacts its physical and electronic properties.
Okay, cool.
And I grow them with a laser.
Yeah. So which year are you now?
So I'm a fifth year doctoral candidate, so I've already passed my preliminary exam. This is when a committee of individuals basically tells me, oh yeah, this guy can definitely do this doctoral research, you know? Because sometimes folks have ideas, and who knows, you know? But once you have a committee of experts, these are usually 5 other PhD holders, and they vet your research after a period of cross-examination, then you can continue with your doctoral research. And so I'm a fifth year doctoral candidate now, instead of a doctoral student.
When are you graduating?
That's a good question. I'll let you know when I graduate. You know, it's hard to say.
Okay, so Josh, where are you from?
Burlington, New Jersey, man. New Jersey, as they say over there, but not really. So that was where I was born and raised. My people are actually from, my parents' people are from New Jersey, and my mother's people are from Louisiana.
Oh, Louisiana. Okay.
So even though I grew up in Jersey, I went to school for college in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Okay.
And I was able to be closer to family.
What you're saying is your dad is from New Jersey.
Yes.
But your mom is from Louisiana.
Yes.
Okay, so you grew up actually in New Jersey. Right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
that's correct.
Cool. So where did you start your schooling in New Jersey?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time, this is back in the 2000s, I'm 26-ish now. New Jersey probably had one of the best public school systems in the country, you know, and Burlington is essentially a suburb. So I had the opportunity to have a fairly good, at least in my opinion at the time, I didn't really know what good was, but I enjoyed it, educational experience as a young person. But I didn't really start seriously thinking about education or anything until college, because I went to public schools my whole life. I never went to a private school or anything.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I see. So at what time did you get to high school?
I was in high school. I graduated from high school in 2014. So I guess 2010 to 2014.
Which school is this?
Burlington Township High School in Burlington, New Jersey. Yeah. It was the public school in the Burlington Township School District. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
At what point did you go to college there?
So entered Xavier University, Louisiana, the best historically Black college/university in the country in 2014, and I attended from 2014 to 2018.
Yeah, and I think that is actually what makes your story beautiful, because you are a Black person and then you also went to an HBCU.
Yes.
How many Black people, actually in terms of American population, would be kind of motivated or inspired to maybe kind of go to an HBCU?
I couldn't give you a statistic off the top of my head because I don't have those numbers, but that many HBCUs, not all, but many HBCUs still have pretty significant undergraduate student enrollment, suggest a non-negligible or statistically significant population of Black folks. Some larger HBCUs like Howard University, North Carolina A&T, Florida Agricultural Mechanical University, FAMU, those universities have pretty large undergraduate enrollments. My alma mater, Xavier University, Louisiana, only had about 3,400 undergraduate students, so it was relatively small, but no less remarkable.
What program did you pursue?
Chemistry.
Oh, chemistry. How long was the program?
4 years. 4 years.
I see. So when was the first time you got to hear about HBCU?
Good question. So my father actually attended Lincoln University, which is an HBCU in Pennsylvania.
Oh, your dad also attended HBCU?
Yeah, but he attended for a master's program.
Okay.
I guess I didn't really hear about HBCUs until that conversation about college came up. So this was maybe when I was 16 or 17. For some more context, actually, I lost both of my parents when I was a child. My mother had cancer, and my father. Yeah.
No, you lost both mom and dad?
Yeah. So for me, the conversation about attending college and going to an HBCU actually came from my mother's sisters, my aunts.
Oh, so you were raised by your aunts?
I was raised by a community of folks after my parents passed away. It wasn't just one individual. I think that, I would give my older sister, most of the credit. She definitely helped raise my brother and I. So I was 8 when my mother passed away, and then I was 15 when my father passed away. So I was essentially a teenager by the time my father had passed. So there wasn't that much more raising to be done, but she definitely provided the stability and network and love I needed to, continue with life after that tragedy. So it was my sister, my older brother, my aunts, my uncles, everybody contributed. So it takes a village, and we were definitely some kids, let me tell you. It wasn't easy, but I love them all the same for it. So,
but Josh, how did that impact your life, losing your mom and your dad? These are like major supports actually for your life, as a young person, losing like your mom at 8, your dad at 15, you know. How does this impact you and your education?
So when I was always kind of interested in science as a kid. I liked dinosaurs quite a bit when I was younger. That was my thing, trains and dinosaurs. And so I think that after my mother had passed away, my interest in science shifted from less general things like dinosaurs, space, trains, and all those things to maybe things that were more specifically related to wellness and healthcare. So I kind of started to become interested in, not being a doctor per se, but technologies that might improve, circumstances for folks like me. For a time, I wanted to be a pharmacist, pharmaceutical chemist, somebody who could design cures for cancer, but I kind of grew out of that phase. So after my father passed away, this is when I was in high school, my shift went more towards fundamentally chemistry. Still a little bit of pharmaceutical stuff, but actually I was a pre-pharm student when I first attended Xavier, and Xavier has its own college of pharmacy. So they train quite a few doctors of pharmacy at Xavier. Some of my colleagues just got their PharmDs. I'm like, oh shoot, everybody about to make this money, man. You love to see it. But I wouldn't really say that the loss impacted my decision so much as the response, because there was a time in my life where I didn't actually know what I wanted to do. I kind of said I was interested in chemistry, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. There was actually a point where in college, I wasn't even sure if I was going to go out of state for college. It's funny. I really didn't get to have an extended conversation with my parents about what college was going to look like. Never mind all the other things that young people think about. But it was my aunts who had a conversation with me about Xavier University, Louisiana, and about the importance of historically Black colleges and universities for supporting the academic and intellectual growth of Black folks in this country. that kind of convinced me to push and go to Xavier. And I attended a pre-college program too. So there was a program that gave individuals the opportunity to get a taste of living on campus, you know, what the city of New Orleans is like. Beautiful city, has its issues, but it is a beautiful city. And between their motivation and their love and dedication to ensuring that I got an education, right, and then also attending that pre-college program, that's kind of when I was interested and dead set on Xavier. You know, there were no other HBCUs considered because, as far as I'm concerned, no other HBCUs exist because Xavier University of Louisiana is the best HBCU.
Oh, really?
But that's just my opinion.
Oh,
that's
really?
my opinion. That's my opinion. Many people will tell you otherwise.
Winfrey's watching you. You know, she went with Howard, so you
man, that's fine. That's fine. You know, Howard is great. It's all love. It's like when you have a big family, right? And like, you know that some people are more popular than other people, but everybody gets love. Same thing. All the HBCUs are important for our people.
Yeah, but being an HBCU student on campus in college, like, how was the feeling like?
Well, man, I think the most interesting aspect of it was the fact that 95% of my colleagues are black. You know, you go from Burlington was actually fairly diverse, as Jersey is. So, you know, I went to school with white folks, Indian people. A lot of my close friends are either Indian or Pakistani. Hispanic folks, other black people. It was fairly diverse. Then I went to Xavier for college, and I was suddenly just surrounded by brilliant black people. You know, and all different types of black people. I'm talking American descendants of slavery. I'm talking individuals who are first generation and second generation African immigrants. I'm talking about people from people who identify as Afro-Caribbean. It was like Creole people, so people who have 3 or so different racial identities that encompass their history. So Creole folks pretty common in Louisiana. You're talking like basically descendants of indigenous folks, French people, and black folks. You know, so like a melting pot. So it was just so many different types of black people, man. I was like, this is crazy. I've never seen this many different types of black people in my life, you know? And when everybody's black, there are no exceptional individuals if everybody has the same, you know, baseline. At an HBCU, it's like you go from being the only and having your experience as a black person tokenized, right? Because you have to be representative of everything that blackness represents when you're the only one, to being in a space where there are so many black people doing so many different ways, doing so many different things, that you realize that there is no single way of being black. And so I think that for my own identity, my development, not only as an intellectual, but as a black person in this country, going to an HBCU was critical in that process, and I would not be where I am today if not for that experience. So to answer your question, it was amazing. It was amazing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
After college, now you came to actually the University of Illinois, Chicago, for your doctoral studies.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, UIC is predominantly a white institution.
Yeah.
Comparing PWIs to HBCUs, what do you think is the uniqueness of HBCU and PWI, in your own perspective?
Well, I guess there are a couple of things I want to say. Well, to start, though UIC is called a PWI, UIC is fairly diverse, especially if you look at the undergraduate student population. I mean, a lot of the grad students in STEM are international students, right? But a lot of the undergrads are not white identifying. You know, we have a fairly large number. I think UIC is considered a Hispanic serving institution, an HSI, because it has a significant portion of students who identify as Hispanic, you know, which makes sense because we're in Chicago, and Chicago is a cultural melting pot too. But the difference is stark. The value system is a little different. There's not as many black folks, you know. And like I said before, when you're limited in your cultural context by your racial identity, right, it kind of makes it harder for you to be all the different types of black you would like to be, because you still feel that tokenization. UIC is pretty good at creating spaces for Black folks. And when I say UIC is good at creating spaces, I mean UIC students are good at creating spaces. You have organizations like Black Graduate Student Association, but also undergraduate organizations like Black Student Union, African Student Council, Collegiate 100, which is a branch of, I think, 100 Black men. So there are many spaces for Black people to be at UIC, but it's definitely different because I don't get that same sense of, this is all about us, at UIC, which makes sense. UIC serves more than simply Black folks. And even Xavier, actually, people might not know this, despite being an HBCU, Xavier was founded in 1925 by Catholic nuns, St. Catherine Drexel. Same Drexels from Cheyney University, same family, but St. Catherine Drexel sold almost all of her earthly possessions to create a fund to create this school to educate Black and Indigenous individuals. So not just Black people, but Native Americans too. But I say that to say it's just different. It's different. The cultural history is different. The community is different. The educational experience is a little different. And I don't say that to say that HBCUs like Xavier are better than UIC. It's really a matter of what it is that you're seeking from your college experience and how that helps you develop or self-actualize into the person you like to be. But I definitely miss it. That's for sure.
So,
yeah.
Looking at the kind of picture you're painting, do you think HBCU should be for Black people and maybe white people, Hispanic people should definitely take a shot for maybe a PWI?
Well, I guess to add some context, it has to be stated that the original purpose of HBCUs was to provide educational opportunities for freed men and women that did not have opportunities because of racial segregation and discrimination immediately following the Civil War. So in that period, 1860, 1880, 1890, a lot of HBCUs had first popped up. Tuskegee Institute was one of them, as you saw in that movie. Booker T. Washington, right? And so at their roots, all HBCUs were founded before 1964, 1965, because Civil Rights Act, After having the opportunity to enroll at other institutions, some people ask, well, what is the purpose of an HBCU? Why do HBCUs exist? They originally were designed to serve Black folks, provide educational experience to Black folks, but the reality is that racial oppression is only one form of oppression in this country. And while for Black folks, there's so much intersectionality in the Black experience that you can't really talk about racism without talking about classism, right? Because we live in a capitalistic society. I want to recognize that HBCUs provide opportunities to, support students who come from financial hardship too. It just so happens to be the case that many Black folks in this country come from financial hardship because we don't have as much generational wealth as, say, our colonizers, white people. But that isn't to say that only Black people can participate in that type of educational experience. And so many HBCUs are not exclusive in college admissions.
What type of HBCUs do you think welcome?
There are a couple in Virginia that have, I think, a greater number of white students than Black students. And there could be any number of reasons why that's the case. But I mean, even I went to school with there were a handful of white folks I went to school with who were my classmates. Xavier also has because New Orleans has a large Vietnamese American population, a lot of the students who enrolled at Xavier in pharmacy programs, for example, but also in, chemistry and biology were Vietnamese identifying, So Xavier was never exclusive to Black folks. It just happens to be the case that it's kind of like you walk into a space that has been designed for a certain type of individual. No one's going to sit there and be like, this door is closed to you. But some individuals recognize that the appeal of an institution like that might be for folks who come from a specific racial background. And that might affect admissions. I don't know that many white people who are scrambling to attend an HBCU. Number one, because many of them probably don't know what HBCUs are. And then number two, because people recognize that when they hear historically Black, that cultural experience lends itself to something, and that may not be in alignment with what someone who does not identify as Black is interested in engaging with for a college experience. But that's not my professional opinion. I'm just going off the noggin what my thoughts are.
I did a little bit of research, and then I think I saw one of the HBCUs, which is Bluefield.
Yes.
Yeah, so now this school predominant have like almost white people attending this school.
It's like 75% or something.
And the Black is like, let's say 9 or I don't know whether 11%.
Yeah.
Do you think the purpose for establishing HBCU is for these purpose?
No, I mean, I don't think anybody who founded an HBCU founded it because they wanted to educate white people, because the white folks were not the individuals who were essentially being killed for trying to attend universities and become educated, right? I just believe that it so happens to be the case that there are certain cultural circumstances, financial circumstances, political circumstances in certain parts of this country that lend themselves to changes in enrollment numbers. I don't know enough about Bluefield to tell you for sure why it is the case that a majority of the student population is white, despite that being historically black, a historically black college university. But I will say that it's a fairly complex thing. A lot of HBCUs are struggling financially. The federal government doesn't always allocate as much money to federal funding to HBCUs as they do other institutions. Because we don't have as many ultra wealthy alumni, right? You're not getting the same sense of massive endowment. Although Mackenzie Scott, Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, definitely came through and donated several very large grants to HBCUs because I think she believed in the power of those institutions. But it's a complex issue, man. I'm not qualified to speak on it more than that, but yeah.
Yeah, so now you're an alumnus of HBCU.
Yeah.
Looking at the alumni body of HBCU, people from different institutions across the U.S., what practical contributions are you people making to ensure that HBCU continue to reach out to underrepresented Black folks in society? Yeah,
so depends on where you are. I'm a young alumnus. I just graduated like 5 years ago. So my financial capital is not substantial enough for me to give back monetary value to my institution, right? So I do one of three things. I support, when I can and when I'm asked, my local alumni chapter. So Chicago's alumni chapter is, I think, the largest alumni chapter for Xavier University, Louisiana, in the country, and they're pretty active. So I try to support them when I can. If they have student events, for admitted students, I try to go and I speak. We actually just had one not too long ago. 2, I spread the word of the importance of HBCUs like Xavier University to anybody I see. I mean, you're never gonna hear me talk trash about Zula. Maybe in the family, right? Because no place is perfect, but I really love my institution. And so I think it's important that we spread the word of the continuing importance of HBCUs and what they provide Black folks in this country in terms of not only social mobility, but intellectual growth and actualization. And then 3rd, I would love to go back, be a professor there. Once I get my PhD, I mean, this is probably off the record, but it would be great if I could.
That is even a question I wanted to ask. The fact that you got your undergrad from an HBCU, why didn't you go to an HBCU for your graduate education?
So HBCUs generally, universities there are different experiences offered by universities at the undergraduate and the graduate level. I actually considered attending Howard. I was accepted to Howard University for a PhD program in chemistry. Really? So I considered going to Howard. But I chose to go to UIC instead. And it was related. I was kind of interested in material science a little bit more. And I wasn't too sure about, how successful I might have been going into certain types of research programs at Howard. Howard has a very strong organic chemistry focus, but organic chemistry was not really what I was going for my my PhD. So I did apply to Howard and get accepted there, but Howard just wasn't the institution that I was looking to stay at for my graduate degree. And also, a lot of HBCUs, despite offering PhD programs, the ones that do offer PhD programs are the larger ones, right? they don't necessarily have the same culture as undergraduate circumstances. Like a lot of HBCUs are not predominantly black at the graduate level, you know? So I'm like, if I'm gonna go to an HBCU, I feel like I should do so because number one, I'm gonna get my PhD. I need to get my PhD. But number two, because I want to be surrounded by my people too, or at least be able to create a network so I can engage with my people. But I don't think that that's the case at a lot of HBCUs. But I don't have too many statistics numbers. You could probably look it up, but I don't have that information. So yeah.
So here in UIC, you are the president of the Black Graduate Students Association.
Yes. Only for this year. So next year we have a new president, okay. Whitney White. She's a neuroscience PhD student who also went to an HBCU, mind you, Spelman.
Oh, Spelman.
Yeah, Spelman and
college,
yes,
right?
that's an all-woman.
Girls, right?
Yeah, so it's actually all female.
All female.
It's partner institution Morehouse. They are, I think, essentially across the way from each other. Morehouse is all male, and then Spelman is all female.
Mostly in Africa, you get this only at a high school level.
Yeah.
At the college level, you don't get maybe all female and all male.
Yeah, so there are still a handful of institutions that are single sex institutions, and there are reasons for that. Spelman, although I can't speak on it, does a remarkable job of preparing young black women to be successful in all aspects of life. I mean, all the women I know from Spellhouse, I guess this is a shameless plug for Spelman and Morehouse, but all the graduates from Spelman and Morehouse that I know of are doing great things. So clearly they're doing something right, you know. Clearly they're doing something right. But anyway.
When was the Black Graduate Students Association here in UIC established?
I think that was 2019. It was founded by Cherie Garrett, who has since received her PhD. And Alexis Grant, who also got her PhD at UIC.
So what motivated you to be involved in part of a student body like BGSA as president?
Yeah, I mean, so as a member, I've been fresh off of graduating from an HBCU, so I'm like, I want to keep that type of experience, you know. Even if I'm leaving an HBCU, I want to maintain the connectivity with my black people, you know. And so part of joining that organization was to make sure that I had that network. And then becoming president, I did so for two reasons. Number one, because Alexis was graduating, and she was like, peace. I'm like, oh, Alexis, I'm sorry, Dr. Grant now was graduating, and she was like, you know, I'm kind of someone else needs to take the lead. But also, I think it was the sense of, I know what this organization has done for me, and so I want to do something for this organization. So I kind of became president during the pandemic, and that was kind of dicey. It was tough, but pulled through. And so now I'm passing the reins on, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the next generation of BGSA executive board members do for the organization.
But what was the main goal for the establishment of the Black Graduate Students Association?
To contribute to the academic, professional, and social well-being of black students at UIC, black graduate students at UIC. Yeah. So professional development resources, most importantly a social network, because the PhD is ridiculous. It's all of our first priorities, but it is a ridiculous experience. So we wanted to make sure that black graduate students at UIC, PhD and master's students, of course, had the support they needed to be successful in their programs. And I can't say that we've always been successful at that, because there's only so much that we as doctoral students can do or doctoral and graduate students can do for other graduate students who are dealing with the ridiculousness of going through a graduate program. But we try to make it easier for folks. So,
what are some current challenges you think the BGSA is facing?
I think the hardest thing is continuity. A lot of times, you know, the people who invest the most in organizations are the people who stay the longest. So that generally tends to be doctoral students. One of the challenges is getting, you know, a regular set of master's students to participate. Whitney's a doctoral student. Yeah, Whitney's a doctoral student. So I mean, honestly, it's hard to engage with folks who are only going to be here for a year. You know, And so I usually don't expect a huge amount of participation from master students, although we've had many master students contribute greatly to BGSA in a number of capacities. So I think one of the challenges is getting like a group of people regularly who are willing to, number one, invest in leadership, but then number two, train the next generation of folks to kind of take on the reins after they're done.
What do you look out for in choosing some of these student leaders?
Nothing in particular beyond a willingness to contribute to a space that is contributed to you. You know, I mean, it's really like a paying it forward. That cultural norm of Black folks paying it forward and making a space for people who come after them applies here too. I can't be too picky because there aren't like a huge number of people who are interested in, you know, taking on these positions. But the ideal candidate is just, number one, loves Black people, you know. Number two is a grad student, and then number three wants to combine, you know, their experiences as a Black individual with their experience as a graduate student to leverage resources so that all of us can be successful. If you can do those things, you basically qualify, you know. Never mind all like the logistical stuff that we take care of in executive board meetings and such, but no sweat there. Y'all don't have to worry about that. Y'all just reap the benefits, you know. So,
in conclusion, like professionally, how do you think the student body here, the Black Graduate Students Association, has impacted you in terms of your network, you know, campus experience, building relationships?
Yeah, so good question, Theo. I think that one of the big things is that being a member of Black Graduate Student Association and saying like, hey, I'm the president of this organization, makes me privy to certain types of conversations that are had on campus that affect individuals, right? But also I think that by being a president of a cultural organization like Black Graduate Student Association shows people that not only am I committed to my science, but I'm also committed to my people, right? So I'm not simply a doctoral student in materials or a doctoral candidate in materials engineering, right? I'm also the president of an organization designed to support Black folks. So professionally, I think that participating in Black Graduate Student Association has allowed me to actualize the type of individual that I'd like to be. That is an individual who knows their stuff from a scientific perspective, you know, right? But is also interested in ensuring that people like him get the same types of opportunities, can also self-actualize, be happy, be successful. You know, Black excellence in a nutshell, right? Self-actualization, Black excellence.
So, as a minority in America, you know, Black people are actually minorities here.
Yeah.
Getting a PhD actually in a STEM degree, you know. I don't know how many Black people actually get to pursue even to graduate level of education. Getting a PhD in actually a STEM field as a minority in America, how does that make you feel?
Well, I can give you a statistic. So, according to the NSF, National Science Foundation, last year, 2021, 2022, I think six Black identifying, so these would have been Black or African American, right? Identifying individuals received PhDs in material science and engineering. Six.
UIC?
No. The entire country. Yeah. Of the institutions that reported in the survey of earned doctorates, I think 6 people received PhDs in material science and engineering who identified as Black or African American.
That's very low.
It is low. So I guess the interesting thing is I feel like I'm 20% of all the people who are going to get their PhD. Black people are going to get their PhD in this field. And I guess whenever I graduate, but it's an experience. I mean, there's actually too much to unpack in that question to talk about in the time we have here, but I guess what I'll generally say,
what does a doctoral degree mean?
Right, exactly. So for me, a doctoral degree is my opportunity to receive the training that I need and the title that I need to do the types of work that I want to do to support my people in the future for a career. I want to become a professor, you know, but before that I want to become an educator. You know, and so the reality is that many institutions, you know, that are interested in educating young folks, and not even just young folks, but anybody who seeks to get a college degree, right, regardless of age, requires that you have a PhD, you know. So my motivation for getting a PhD was that I wanted to become an educator at the college level, and that required that I get a PhD in my area. beyond that, I think it's a representation of your ability to think independently and pursue a line of inquiry related to a research challenge. That's it. You know, there's really no more or there's no more, no less to it than that. I think the PhD is a glorified title in some ways. I think that it is an alt-modish or old-fashioned relic from an era that was really designed to stratify individuals on the basis of class and intellectual achievement or educational achievement. But yeah, nowadays a PhD for me just means that I had enough tolerance and resilience to go through 5 to 7 years of research inquiry to get a title that says, this man a doctor. This man is a doctor. Yeah. So
if you get opportunity to be in a very significant top office in this country, what are going to be your contributions even to black people and even to American education?
Yeah, so like if I could wave a magic wand and say like instantly get into a position with like, I don't know, Department of Education or something, right? I'd probably be like, yeah, let's just throw a bunch of money at HBCUs, you know, grow some of these STEM, but also non-STEM or STEAM, I think it's called, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics programs, so that we can get more students, so we can have more students coming through these remarkable institutions, HBCUs, and doing all the things that they want to do. But not even just, you know, HBCUs, just putting aside more resources, financial resources, not only for black students, but black, indigenous students, students of color, students who come from gender or sexual minorities, you know, so that they can all actualize in the way that, you know, they would like to, right? Because the reality is that as much as we have to beg for the resources, number one, this entire country was essentially established on stolen land, right? Land stolen from indigenous folks, and it was built by us, you know? So my ancestors built the establishment that was this country on land that was stolen from indigenous folks, right? So with that in mind, there's no reason why everybody should not have access to opportunities to be whatever it is they want to be. So if I could get that top office and just have like someone say, hey man, where you want this money to go? I'm gonna throw all my people all the money. All the money. Yeah. I don't know if I want to be a politician though. There are people who are much better people who might be able to handle that. Me, just put me in a classroom with some folks and we can talk about material science and I'll be happy.
I'm sure a black person is actually watching you right now and it's like, this guy actually got a doctoral degree in civil and materials engineering. You've come a long way. You lost your mom at 8. You lost your dad at 15.
Yeah.
What word do you have for someone as a black person who's watching you, and maybe he's in college right now, maybe high school. They have a lot of ambitions and visions for their life. What word of motivation do you have for somebody like that who's watching you?
Yeah, so I think number one, I would say never forget that you're remarkable. And when I say never forget you're remarkable, I'm not saying that you're an exceptional individual. I'm not talking about exceptionalism. I'm talking about you're remarkable simply for the fact that you are alive and kicking today in the 21st century in light of everything that's happening, you know. And if you're an American descendant to slavery, or you know, you're an individual who comes from an extensively marginalized community, kudos for being able to survive, you know, because the fact that you're here today is a testament not only to you and your family, but your ancestors as well. So never forget that you belong here, right? You belong. You deserve to experience all there is to experience in life. If that means going to get a college education, you know, that's fine. If that means doing the things that you're passionate about, even if it doesn't mean going to college, that's fine too. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that you have to do is live a fulfilling and happy life. Whatever that looks like for you, go for it. Go for it. But that's really all I have to say, you know? That's it for me. Yeah. Thank you, Theo.
You do have a beautiful story. I didn't know about the loss of all of these people.
Yeah.
And that is what makes your story very beautiful.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
This video should inspire many who are able to watch my video. Thank you, George, for making time with us on the Turning Point.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you.